Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years retirement community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. Today, we are thrilled to welcome a two-time Emmy Award winner, two-time Golden Globe winner, one of the stars of groundbreaking series like Cagney and Lacey and Queer as Folk, and author of the memoir, Apparently There Were Complaints. Please help us welcome Sharon Gless. Sharon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. This is great. Thank you for having me.
No, we have our pleasure. We were very excited about you coming on. I mean, we have so much to cover in your career, but to start with, I've been reading your memoir, Apparently There Were Complaints, and it's just fascinating. So well done, funny and heartbreaking. So you grew up in LA. Your grandfather was a prominent attorney, whose clients included Howard Hughes, Cecil DeMille, Louis B. Mayer, Joan Crawford, etc. Just absolute Hollywood royalty. And he advised you to not pursue a career in show business.
Right. He said, stay out of it. It's a filthy business. Okay.
So
I was not afraid.
No, did he give any reasons or just no? Just that was...
No, I didn't ask it. My relationship with my grandfather was quite formal. Mm-hmm. And if he said something, I'd never challenged him. But in my mind, I was thinking, but that's how you made all your money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I just said, yes, Grandpa. And then, many, many years later, the dream didn't go away. So I just went after it. And I got the greatest support from him.
Oh,
finally. Well, by the time I was 26 years old, I admitted I wanted to be an actress. That's way late to start in this business, but
yeah.
I think if I had started earlier, I may not have made it,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, both your grandparents played important roles in your life for different reasons. Can you expand on that a little?
Well, probably the most powerful person in my life was my grandmother. For one thing, she held all the purse strings. That's not why I loved her. I feared her sort of before I loved her. But when someone is holding all the purse strings and you're young, you have to dance, Well, probably in your adult life too, if you allow someone else to hold your purse strings, you got to dance. Mm-hmm. And I just, she was very strict with me, very critical about my size, because I've always tended to be heavy, except during certain ages, in my life, where I'm sure you've seen it on the roles I played. I fluctuate. She frightened me. Mm-hmm. And but there was something about her that was real, and I respected her, and I really tried hard to dance. And not literally, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, sure.
And then she was married, but they were sort of divorced. It's complicated. It's in my book. To my grandfather, who started out really as a very, very poor boy in Phoenix, Arizona. His father drove the stagecoach. And he came to Hollywood and became probably the most famous attorney in the golden days of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. And one of the things that I loved reading about you was that you worked for a film company, and part of your job was to read lines with actresses who came in, and you realized that you were better than they were.
Well, immodestly speaking, yes. I didn't realize that until I did it. It was just part of my job. And I remember trying very hard to give that actor and actress everything that they would need for their response, And I did realize when it was through that, gosh, I was better than they were. And I made out their paychecks and I made out mine. Wait a minute. I don't know why I'm so afraid to do this. I could do this. And once I knew, this sounds please, there's no arrogance in this at all. You know, it's a long journey. But once I knew that I could do this, I stopped being afraid and I started pursuing it. And oh, maybe 2 years later, Universal Studios took me behind the secretary's desk and put me in front of the camera.
Mm.
And the rest is history.
So then you become a contract player for Universal.
Right.
And you were officially the last contract player. Is that true?
I am. I became the last contract player in the history of Hollywood.
Oh,
Universal Studios was the last studio to do that.
Huh.
Amazing.
And their contract system ended anyway 10 years after I started. And everyone else had already left or been asked to leave. That's sort of how it works. And I was still there. And contract system ended, but they kept me and asked me to do a series for them, which did not go well. It's in my book. But when I left, the contract system was over and I was the last one to leave the lot.
Mm.
They would just put you in different roles all the time, whatever they saw fit.
Yes, but I had to audition.
Okay.
I always had to audition.
Mm-hmm.
The only the good thing about being a contract player is that you would be sneaked the sides. Sides are your script that you're going to read for the producer, the scene, and I'd be sneaked the scene the night before.
Mm.
So I'd get to at least work on it. Usually when you'd come in for an interview, they just hand you scenes in those days, and you just did it cold.
Mm. One of the things I loved reading in your memoir, talking about contract players, you were cast to be a date for Steven Spielberg. What were your thoughts then of that being part of the job?
Well, yeah, I mean, he just finished doing Duel, I believe was the name of the movie with Dennis Weaver, a movie for television, and he was just coming off location, and I guess he wasn't dating anyone at the time, and it was a big deal to go to the first American Film Institute's dinner. I think it was the first AFI dinner, yeah. And he needed a date, and I'm sure Steven Spielberg never needed a date, but they were going to try and make it one of those events, you know, where you show up the two young people, right, in the business. And so Richard Zanuck, who's the head of 20th at the time, asked Monique James, who was the head of the talent at Universal, to send him all of her contract players' photos. And he picked mine.
Mm.
So I was the one. He picked me up. It was a black tie dinner, and he picked me up in his tux, and he opened up his tux, and he had a T-shirt on with the Roadrunner on it. And his first words to me were beep, beep.
And this guy would go on to that career.
Go on to this amazing career. I saw him once. I've seen him a couple of times, but I saw him once after that. And he now was huge. Right. And I went up to him and I said, Stephen, hi, I'm Sharon Gless. I don't know if you remember, we went out. I said, whatever happened to you? Your career after that.
Well, you had a lot of guest starring parts in some of the major shows of the time, among them Bob Newhart. And so you tell a few great stories about Suzanne Pleshette. And so she was very friendly to you. What was she like?
Suzanne Pleshette was wonderful. She was so supportive. I was so young and so green, and she knew it. Mm-hmm. And she was just had a mouth on her that she'd use constantly. And she just made me laugh. It was in the days when you just didn't wear dirty T-shirts. And our first day of rehearsal, I was petrified. I'd never worked in front of a live audience, and I'm loaned out to her show. I'm taken off the Universal lot and sent to her show, to Bob Newhart show. She walks out with a T-shirt she just had made that had rhinestones on it that says "bitch." My phone. Yeah, bitch. I mean, I'm not going to tell you stories about her. I don't know how.
You can tell you anything.
You want me to tell the story about her getting
Absolutely.
the offer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, now you got me crazy.
I wondered if that's where you were heading. Yeah. Okay. She walks out in the bitch t-shirt. And do you know, I have to tell you something. She knew Monique James, who was head of talent at Universal, I think called Suzanne and said, I've got a young one for you. And she's petrified. And I'm sure Suzanne is doing all this for my benefit. She said, well, I just got an offer from a feminine hygiene spray company. They want me to do a commercial. I said, really? Are you going to do it? She said, hell no. She said, Dorothy Provine, who was an actress, said, goes on television and tells everybody that her cunt smells. Then they want me to go on and tell me mine smells worse. I said, oh my God. I don't know who your audience is, but I think you know the story because okay.
Great story. I love it because it was an absolutely fantastic story.
Yeah, she was so good to me. As filthy a mouth as she had on her, she also was so kind. She knew when you were scared. She nursed me through that one little scene. When it was over, we walked off stage and she put her arm around me and she said, you were wonderful.
Fantastic.
So that's the kind side of her, do you know?
Yeah. Sure. Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So after some more guest appearances on very popular shows like Emergency and the Rockford Files, you became a regular on the series Switch, starring Eddie Albert and Robert Wagner. Now, I had the honor of working with Eddie Albert in a Disney film, and I loved him tremendously. What are some of your memories of him and Robert and being on the show?
Well, I just got I get a call once every 3 or 4 weeks from RJ, from Robert Wagner.
Oh, that's awesome.
To this day, calls and checks on me. They were wonderful to me. I was so green. And Eddie was a little more abrupt, because he'd done everything in this business. Stage and he'd done everything. Stage, series, movies. And he always wore this red sweater at his desk. They played two. One was an ex-con, one was an ex-cop. And they formed this detective agency. So Eddie had his office, and he always wore this bright red sweater at his desk. And one day I went and I said, about the sweater. He said, yes. I said, are you trying to upstage me? He said, honey, I don't have to wear a red sweater to upstage you. He was, but he said it with love, but he was tough. And RJ, Robert Wagner, he'd come up to me and say, you know that funny thing you do? And I said, well, yeah. He said, do it in this scene because they'll cut to you, even though I'm talking. I said, okay. So they start the scene. RJ's talking, and I'm supposed to do this take that I do, apparently. And he drops one of his props. He said, sorry, guys, while you're relighting. Sorry. He leans over to me. He says, you didn't do it. If you do it, they'll cut to you. And I said, oh, okay. And so he did it again, and I did what he told me to do. On the side, the camera's on me. It's my close-up. And he said, they're going to use that close-up. They don't care what I'm saying. And he would do that to try and feature me. He then would teach me, he said, now listen, this is your first series of your own, that you're on as a regular. He said, I want you to stop doing guest spots. I said, really? I said, why? He said, because now you have your own series with me here. And he said, just keep on this avenue that you're doing. He said, you'll get your own series one day. And by God, I did what he told me. And I went on to do almost nine series.
Wow.
My career.
Wow.
And you credit Robert Wagner with basically giving you your career because you were on the outs like at that time, right?
Oh, yeah. I was being apparently fired from Universal.
Wow.
I'd been there I think for 3 years, and I was just I wasn't getting parts, and the head of talent, Monique James, would not return my calls. And I had heard that Robert Wagner had asked to meet me for his series. And it was whispered, if I don't get this, I'm out. I'm out on the street. But I didn't let that bother me. I just had to go in. I went in and I did my best for RJ. He was the only actor who was present by reading. And the next day I got, and catch this, the description of the actress, the role I was going for, was a Natalie Wood lookalike. Well, check it out. I mean, you know what I mean? I didn't have a prayer. Okay, but I went in, and RJ thought I was funny. And the next day I got a call saying, well, saved by the bell.
Oh, wow.
From the head of talent at Universal. And I was so angry at her, because I'm not an arrogant person at all. I was so angry at her. I said, they're lucky to have me. Obviously, I was humbled. But she said, well, yes, they are. Anyway, RJ took me under his wing. He and Eddie in his own grumpy way. When I got my star on Hollywood Boulevard, many, many years later, Eddie Albert showed up. And he was not a kid by then. He showed up and spoke for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he was extraordinary to me. And yes, I knew his grumpy side, but because my co-star Kim Richards and I were both children, we were 9 and 11 years old, he was very gentle with us and very kind and very supportive. And I remember him fondly and spent a lot of time with him. He was really great that way. I'm so glad to hear that. So
I think he's an actor, and he admires actors, you know.
Yeah. Well, so did your life change?
Can you hear my husband talking on the phone in the other room?
No.
Actually, no.
Okay,
not
good.
At all. Not at all.
All right.
But did your life change now that you were a regular on a series?
Yes. Oh, it did. It changed forever. I then went on to a big miniseries at the time. I got the lead, the female lead. Excuse me. And then I went on to other series. There's so many. If you remember them, I'm happy to talk about them. I went in and starred in my own series for the first time called Turnabout. And I played a man trapped inside a woman's body. It didn't last long, but it was my starring role. I got billed over the title. And NBC sort of they became, I understand, enchanted sort of with me in that role and thought I was the new Carol Lombard, they said. So then I started getting more series. I got House Calls, I replaced Lynn Redgrave.
We're going to ask about that. Yes,
you want to ask me about that?
Well, we'll ask about that. Yeah. Well, first, I briefly want to talk about one other show. The miniseries used to be such a big event in television, and you were in my favorite of all time, Centennial. You were primarily with Andy Griffith. And what do you remember about the show? And also, there was an incident in the book that just blew me away. You were very fortunate not to have had something happen to you in that.
Yeah. Do I have time to tell that story?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. Well, anyway, I was still a youngin', contract player, and I was invited to do the last chapter of Centennial. They were done in chapters,
Right.
12 chapters. And it was done in Colorado, all in the same town that art directors kept changing as the generations went along. And as I said, I was just still a young contract player, and I didn't like get my own trailer or anything. And they had this thing called quads, and they were a long trailer with 4 little dressing rooms in. And I was given one of those. And every morning they'd lay out my clothes, and I'd go in. I didn't have a dresser. I went in by myself. I put on my costume, and I lay down waiting to be called. And I kept falling asleep. And every morning while I'm asleep, I get this banging at my door. I get up and I open it, and it's not Eddie Albert. It's forgive me, who am I talking about? Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith.
It's Andy Griffith's driver.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Andy Griffith's driver. And he said, Andy wants you to come over and hang out with him in his trailer. I said, oh, okay. So I'd go every morning and I'd hang out with Andy. And then when he would go to shoot scenes, he would say, don't you leave. Stay here. I want you here when I get back. And some scenes we had together. So that was nice. We'd go off together. But so I never left his trailer, except to go back to my room. Like if I wanted to use my own bathroom. So I wasn't going to use Andy Griffith's bathroom, So I'd go back to mine just briefly. And every morning, this was the ritual. I'd go in, change my clothes, lie down, fall asleep. There's a knock on my door. Andy wants you to hang out with him. Okay. So I do this for over a week. I hang out with Andy. So we get to be really close friends. He's clearly one of the funniest men in the world. Not only is he a fine dramatic actor, but he's also a great comedian. Anyway, so we go back, we finish our episode, and not to confuse things, I was in episode 12, the last one. Mm-hmm. But episode 11 had not been shot yet. They were shooting them out of sequence. So we all go back to Los Angeles, and the actors of episode 11 arrive. And we heard that a boy in episode 11 was found dead in his dressing room from, what's the poisoning you get from a heater? Oh,
carbon monoxide?
Carbon monoxide poisoning. He was found dead. Mm-hmm. And it was in my dressing room. The one where I kept falling asleep. And when I'm working, I don't fall asleep. I'm too nervous. But Andy's driver always woke me up, saying, Andy wants you to come into his trailer. I'd been that, I was that exact quad, the one I was in. And God bless his soul, God rest his soul. The young actor, he was like 22 years old, had a 2-year-old son. And they found him dead in that room. From what was happening is the snow, it was very cold, and the snow was freezing the pipes. But they kept running in the trailers, even though the pipes were frozen. So.
Well, just a second, you mentioned, you're talking about house calls. Since Ike and I had started doing this show, I've been so disappointed in finding out the true nature of some of the people that I used to like. Wayne Rogers came off like such a real jerk to you. What was that atmosphere on the show like for you when the lead is basically saying that he didn't want you?
Yeah, I mean, I hate it. I never badmouth actors. I mean, they have their problems with them. But Wayne Rogers was specifically mean to me. I was asked to replace Lynn Redgrave. Excuse me. That takes guts. But, I do what I'm told. I'm a contract player. So Wayne, the studio, CBS said, Wayne, of course, wants to meet you. I said, fine. Any place you say, Sharon. Well, I picked the bar of Tail of the Cock, which is a big hangout in the Valley in those days. There I am having a drink and a cigarette. So I was then. And he was appalled because he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and it just didn't go off well. But the studio said, do whatever you want, smoke, drink, he'll meet you where you say. So I said, okay. And within 5 minutes of meeting him, he said, I could have saved her, you know. I said, I beg your pardon? He said, I could have saved Lynn Redgrave's job. I wanted. I said, oh, okay. Lynn Redgrave wanted to make as much money as he did. She was billed over the title with him. She wanted to make as much money as he did. She's had carried the show equally and wanted to nurse her baby on the set. And he had her fired.
Unbelievable.
Try that today. You know, we've done a lot since then. Cagney and Lacey did a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, Wayne just made my life. Oh, so at the party, I said there's a party CBS had for me, and Wayne was supposed to introduce me to the cast and the executives. This is in a private home. It was a lovely party. And Wayne gets up to introduce me. He said, I didn't want her. She's not my choice, but CBS loves her. They think she's the new Carole Lombard. I mean, it's the worst introduction. I just was stunned, but I didn't know what to say because I'm the new kid in town, you know?
Wow.
So I sort of let it go. And after a while on the show, he took me aside. He said, I don't like what you're doing in that character. I want you to stop being Carole Lombard. I said, I'm not being Carole Lombard. He said, I want you to be Grace Kelly. I said, it's a comedy. I said, I'm just being Sharon Gless playing another person. It was very difficult. It was hard. Oh, you want me to tell you the story about Lynn?
Sure.
And my party?
Sure.
You like that story?
I do love that story.
Okay, so we cut to, after a year, the show ends, it dies. And I have a party for the cast, whom I never really got to know very well, because most of my scenes were with Wayne. Anyway, I have a party in my little house in the valley, and I invite all the cast, say thank you. And I thought, I'm going to do something really classy. I'm going to invite Lynn Redgrave. I'm going to call her up, see if she'll come. Well, she's classier than I am. She accepted. And she said, hey, you want to do something? I said, sure. It's Lynn Redgrave, for God's sake. She said, you want to stage a fight? I said, great. I said, sure, what do we do? She said, well, I said, pull up in my driveway. You know, she said, okay, when I pull up in your driveway, I said, I'll see your lights when you arrive. She said, okay, when you see my lights, come out. So I said to the guests who'd been there a couple of hours already, I said, who's that? So I go out. I said, I'll be right back. And I go out. I'm saying, hello, Lynn Redgrave. You know, it was a big deal to meet her. And she said, hello, Sharon Gless. She said, you ready to start? I said, I am. She says, fuck you. I said, fuck me. I said, you can't act for shit. That's why you got fired. I said that to a Redgrave. Okay?
Yeah.
And we keep fighting all the way across the lawn to my side doors that I had open. Fuck you. And I slammed the door in her face. And everybody could hear her voice. You can't miss her voice. And I slammed the door and I turned to the guests and said, what a cunt. Sorry, I don't know how you're. This is how it went. And they were just
of course
petrified. I said, I'm just kidding. I said, get in here. I opened the door and told her to get in here. And it was the best party. They missed her and they'd loved her for 3 years, you know, and they'd never seen her again. And it was fabulous. And it's all due to her ingenious idea.
Oh my God, what fun.
Yeah, it was. God rest her soul.
Well,
Anyway.
speaking of Cagney and Lacey, it comes along and you turn it down twice. First the TV movie, which went to Loretta Swit, and then the regular series, which went to Meg Foster. But the part was originally written with you in mind, yes?
Yes. Apparently, yes. I on Queer as Folk, not Queer as Folk, I'm sorry. On Turnabout, where I played the man trapped inside a woman's body. Well, the two story editors were the two women who were writing the script for Cagney and Lacey on spec. Barney Rosenzweig came up with the idea, and not his wife at the time, but his girlfriend, was a wonderful writer, and she had a writing partner. And Barney told them the idea he had and what he wanted them to write, and they did. And they came to me on the side saying, we're writing this thing. Oh, no, wait, no, they never told me what they're writing. They came to me saying, is there anything you want us to do with the series I was doing with them? I'm making it confusing. Anyway, Barbara goes home while I'm shooting. Sorry. I'm getting confused. What's the series where I played the man trapped inside the woman's body? Turnabout. So anyway, she goes home and she tells Barney, I just found Cagney. He said, really? He said, yeah, I found her. So he looks at the shows of Turnabout. He said, nah, that isn't Cagney. She said, all right. So they started looking somewhere. She was still writing. And they went to a screening of a miniseries I'd done called Moviola, The Scarlet O'Hara Wars. And I played Carol Lombard in it. That's when NBC saw me play Carol. That's how that all happened. And Barney and Barbara were in a screening of The Scarlet O'Hara Wars. And Barney pointed to the screen. He said, there's Chris Cagney. Barbara said, that's Sharon Gless, the one I told you about. I said, oh, yeah, okay, well, her I want. So they offered it to me, and I turned it down for many reasons. And Barney says actors are not always the best judges of material. So I turned it down, and so they got Loretta to play it, the pilot, and Tyne Daly was signed. And then it went to series, and Loretta had to go back to House Calls. No, not House Calls, sorry.
MASH, yeah.
MASH, thank you. Thank God you're here. So then they had to recast for the series, and Barney came after me again, but I had just been put in House Calls. So I couldn't do it. So Meg did it, and they did it for a year with Tyne Daly, and it didn't work. So Barney got on a plane and went to New York to find out the next season's lineup on CBS. He wanted to see if House Calls was still on the schedule, because I was in it. And he's standing outside the door, and the executives all come out and say, Barney, no. He said, just tell me one thing. Is House Calls on the schedule? No. Thank you. So he calls my manager, Monique, and said, this is Barney Rosenzweig calling for the third time to ask Sharon Gless to play Christine Cagney. She said, I'm sorry, Barney, dear, Sharon is not available. And he said, bet me she's not available. She just got fired.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how it happened. And thank God he pursued me, because it's certainly the best decision I ever made.
But you didn't want to take it the third time, even, because taking over again for another actress, right? Is that?
Yeah, you read the book, boy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, I had my first meeting. I said, I don't want to do it. I told Monique. She said, this man has asked 3 times, Sharon. I think we should at least have lunch with him. Give him the courtesy of that. All right. So I go to meet him at a wonderful restaurant in Los Angeles called Musso and Frank's. And so I meet him, and I don't like him at all. He kept telling me how hard I'd have to work. on this show, 18-hour days. And I'm thinking, does this man think I'm a beginner? I've already starred in series of my own, billed over the title. I was offended by him trying to warn me how grueling it would be. And as I say in my book, I kept looking at a watch I'm not wearing. When is this thing going to be over? And the head of production of Orion, the studio that owned it. I mean, it was Barney's idea, but obviously he had to sell it to somebody. The head of Orion was also at the lunch, and he stepped in and said all the things I wanted to hear, which silly. Actors love to be stroked, and I admit it. He said all the things I wanted to hear. And so outside, my manager said, Sharon, I think we should do it. I said, I don't want to. I don't want to do another series. She said, I said, I want to be in the movies. She said, yes, dear, that's what we all want. But in the interim, until that happens, I think you should consider this series. I said, well, I don't like the guy with the beard. She said, his name is Barney Rosenzweig. As I say in the book, whatever. Anyway, he pursued me and did it properly. And Tyne and I met and had a big battle about billing. That's in the book. And it's fascinating how it was handled. That's never been done before.
Well,
Anyway.
how was it handled? I mean, because that's a pretty big thing
okay.
Yeah.
I had done many series and Tyne had not, but she did create the role of Lacey. So she wanted top billing. And I didn't blame her. I told her, I said, you've been in this show longer than I have. I don't blame you, but I can't afford to take second billing to you. I mean, I've built a career on television. I hope you understand, and good luck to you. And so there was no animosity between us. She stated her case and I understood it, but I stated mine. So it was over. So Barney decided he would switch billing every week. Every week on that series, you'll see, starring Sharon Gless. Next week, starring Tyne Daly. And every week, they switched. Whoever got the first card was switched every week. And if I got the first card on television, there was always an ad taken out every week for the show. Whoever got the first card on television got the second card in the print ad. It drove them crazy because it was contractual.
Oh my gosh.
I never even noticed that when watching it. I never noticed that whatsoever when watching it.
In the gag reel, the editor put together two main titles. Da 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 da. That's our theme, right? And boom, starring Sharon Gless. Da 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 da. Starring Tyne Daly. And it just was a joke through all the years.
Oh my gosh.
This was a show that was canceled twice. Once before you got there, and once after your first year. So what was amazing was this is one of those cases where the massive letter writing campaign actually saved the show. I mean, you always see things like that when fans get upset and write in, but more often than not, it has no effect. Were you amazed?
Yeah, I don't know of a campaign that big. I'm sure fans have always written in when something of theirs is canceled that they love. What happened is, after we were canceled, Barney called Tyne and me and said, "Have you have any mail? Have you gotten any mail?" And yes, and Tyne had, yes. I send someone over to get it for you, get it from him. I said, sure. He took every single letter and he wrote a personal, it had to be a form letter. And he sent a form letter to every single person who responded.
Amazing.
And he said, write a letter to your local affiliate station, and write a letter to the I think it's the New York Times. And what happened was the mail started coming, and started coming and coming. And the affiliate station is sending, all the affiliates in the United States are sending it to the main CBS. All of the New York Times sent it all to CBS in LA. And it became this landslide.
Mm.
And the power of the people, you know, they saved us. They stepped up. Because that one man had this idea that we have a voice. And he made a series about two women who have a voice. Or try to. And often succeed.
Yes.
Well, that's, you know, that is the thing. It was such a groundbreaking show for the portrayal of strong women leads. I loved it. I was a huge fan back in the day.
Arnie said in a fairer world, they could have worked at the post office. He said it really doesn't matter because it's about the two women.
Right. Yeah.
He said, I put them in a job where there's, you know, life-threatening and stuff. But it's always been about the two women, not what they did.
Well, we've heard that you weren't exactly aware of the impact that had culturally at the time.
No. I had no, Diane and I were working 18 hours a day. And when you're doing a television series, it's not like being on stage where you go out and take a bow to applause. I never asked what the numbers were. Apparently it was like 35 million a week, but you know, it's like Super Bowl time, but we didn't know. And we were just, you know, going along. And towards the end of the show, we were still shooting it, but it was towards the end of it. This is when I found out the impact we had. I can't speak for time. Excuse me, please. We were invited to Washington to do the March on Washington. Bush was in office. And women joined from all over the country. Arrived in D.C. We did this enormous march. I'd never been a part of anything like this. Tyne and I were in the front holding the banner with Gloria Steinem and Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, it was huge. And at least me and my naivete, I had no idea where we were going, what was going to happen. I show up, you know, that's what I do. And so we get there where we're supposed to be. I didn't have any idea where we were physically. And Gloria says to me, go out on stage. Excuse me. I said, oh, I'm not going out there. She said, just walk out. I said, what do I say? She said, don't say anything, just walk out. Time, both of you, go out. Just walk out on stage. Well, you guys, can't tell you. So the two of us walked out on stage, and there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of women, all in front of the Washington Monument. I didn't even know where we were. It was like if you were the president and looking at your constituents. You know what I mean? It was the most beautiful sight, this monument, and then loaded with women screaming and crying and clapping. And I looked at them, and I'm not stupid. I got it. I realized the impact that we had had. And I don't think I ever would have known, despite a press and all of that. You have to feel that feeling to see the women we did it for. And there they were.
Amazing.
We changed their lives.
Well,
not that we're so great. We just were in a vehicle that allowed them to change their own lives.
No, I definitely think you had an impact, a huge cultural impact. Now, after being almost canceled, the show comes back, wins a couple of awards for Best Drama. You win the Emmy twice for lead actress. So
Tyne won it 4 times.
Yes. But how satisfying is that for you, coming from being a contract player to almost being fired to winning an Emmy now?
It was so swell. And for the first 3 years of Cagney and Lacey, I lost the Emmy to Tyne Daly. And I learned to be gracious. I really had that one down. And the 4th time, shit, if they didn't say my name. And it was the most wonderful feeling. And Michael J. Fox presented it to me. Michael J. Fox and Ali McGraw. And I understand that there's always a rehearsal the day of the Emmys for the presenters. So they go out pretending they have an envelope and open it and just say a fake name, they just to time it. And I understand that day in rehearsal, Michael J. Fox walked out, opened the envelope and said, "Oh, Sharon Gless." He just made it up, but so when he did finally open it and it really was my name, he said, "Oh, this is great." Sharon Gless. It was wonderful.
Fantastic.
Well,
I won it again. I won it the next year also. And then I thought I'd win it the next year. And Tyne and I would each have 3. We'd tie, but it went back to Tyne. That's okay.
Well, now it's getting all this amazing critical attention. And of course, the show was holding its own on Mondays, but then the network decides in their infinite wisdom to change the night. Your ratings dipped, and then the show was canceled, and you didn't even find out about it directly in the middle of a cliffhanger, no less. How upset were you, or were you kind of ready to move on?
The cancellation of Cagney and Lacey?
Yeah.
I was in rehab. The name of my book is Apparently There Were Complaints. And it was about my drinking. Christine Cagney was an alcoholic on the show. It's the first time that disease had ever been dealt with by a lead in a film. Leads in series. I mean, they never have anything wrong with them. They're just heroes. But we decided to take this hero and give her clay feet. And she was an alcoholic. And turns out, so was I. My brilliant performance. By the way, I did win the Emmy for the drunk episode, but I was not drunk. I do not drink when I'm working. Please know that. Yeah. I'm not that good. I have to be totally clear and sharp in order to do that kind of work. And they wrote an amazing script for me. Arnie invited me into his office. He said, "I want you to see this. We're not showing it to anybody. And I want your feedback." And it was that episode. And I took it home and I read it, and I went back to his office and I said, "It's brilliant. Who are you going to get to play it?" I was so petrified by the material. It was daunting, but we did it. Never been done on television before.
You were great in it too. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And the nice thing that Barney did when all the really terrible scenes happened in her apartment, once she entered her apartment in the second half of the second half, he shot everything in sequence. On TV, you never shoot anything in sequence. It's just too expensive, But he shot everything in sequence. So as drunk as I got, I knew how far I still had to go and how far I could go. And it was a very generous thing on his part, because it cost a lot more money. Because we didn't know where I was going to land, in that apartment. And he did it all in sequence.
Well, I do want to hit another groundbreaking show that you were in, Queer as Folk. I used to watch that show, and I thought it was so well done. You were fantastic in it. How did you come to the part to begin with?
And I'm so sorry. In
Queer as Folk.
Oh, that changed my life again. I'm so blessed, honest to God. So I wasn't so busy. And it was during my career where I gone through menopause. I got really obese. And my husband wanted a divorce. And I said, "I'll give you a divorce." We'd been married 9 years. He said, "But not until I make it to 10, because I'm going to beat out the other 2. He was married to the other 2 wives 9 years also. So anyway, I was doing a play in Chicago, and a friend of mine, sneaked me a script called Queer as Folk. No one had seen it. It was under the table. And it was
You'd never seen the British version? You had never seen it?
I'd never seen the British version.
Okay.
And here was the American version that was only being sent to Chicago and New York and LA for actors to see, for agents to submit their clients if they had the nerve. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So somebody in Chicago that I knew was a casting director. And he called me. He said, Sharon, I have a script. Have you ever heard of Queer as Folk? I said, no. He said, there's a part in here for you. He said, I'm sending a car over right now. I want you to call me immediately. So I read it, and I didn't call him immediately. I called Showtime, the network who was making it. I've never done, I'm not that aggressive on my own behalf because I've always had a manager, you know. But I called Showtime. Barney's assistant now worked for the head of Showtime. So I knew her. And I called them and I said, I want this part. She said, you don't want this part, Sharon. I said, yeah, I do. She said, it's in Canada. I said, I don't care. She said, they're not paying any money. I don't care. She said, well, I'll run it by Jerry. I said, please. Jerry Offsay was the head of Showtime. And he was the man brave enough to take this series because it was sent to, what's the other big cable network?
HBO?
HBO. It was sent to HBO first, and they were cowards. They backed down. They wouldn't do it. So Jerry Offsay at Showtime did do it. Jerry gets on the phone. He says, Sharon, I like the idea. He said, I think you'll bring a little class to the project. I said, Jerry, class is not what I had in mind. He said, may we fly you out to meet the producers? I don't want to run roughshod over them. You know, it's their show. I said, of course. So I went in and I met them. I said, I don't read. That's because I'm not good at it. He said, no, you don't have to do that. We had the most fun meeting, and I walked out with the job. And that changed my life again. Changed my life again. My weight would go up and down, and no matter what size I was, they'd have Debbie, who was my character. They'd have Debbie either on a diet or Debbie eating ice cream out of a container. I mean, they totally just set everything to accommodate whatever I was doing to myself.
Oh my gosh.
They were so wonderful. And it was a great show. Boy, did that. I was so fortunate to be part of a show that saved lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to get mail from young boys saying, my best friend, in this one letter, my best friend is not alive. He committed suicide, but he said, I am alive because I saw your show. He didn't see the show in time. And I used to hold boys who'd come up to me saying, would you hold me? I'd say, sure. And I'd give him a hug. And one boy cried where he couldn't stop for several minutes on the clock. And all I could think of is the damage that has been done to this. That a woman on television he relates to, and if she just will have physical contact with him. And I got to do that.
Yeah, you absolutely.
I got to do that.
You became the adopted mother to much of the gay community because of that. It's really astounding.
The producers called me recently, the producers of Queer as Folk, asking me, because I said, I have one more series in me. And they called me and they said, you want to do Debbie's Diner? And I thought, same character, same place. And she comes back after all these years and buys the place finally and runs it. And I said, I don't know. I thought, gee, I've done it. And anyway, I called them a couple of weeks ago. I said, you still want to do that with me? Because the other Queer as Folk was on and it just didn't land, the one in New Orleans. I don't know if you saw it.
Wow. Is it going to be happening?
So what do you think?
I would
You
love
had
to
to
see
do
that.
it?
Yeah, I think you should do that. So
I don't know. We have to see if we can sell if there's an interest for honest gay material.
it was such a well done show. I mean, the cast was so great. You still keep in touch with
Weren't they
anyone?
fabulous?
Yes.
Oh, I was so fortunate to work with those young boys. They were so brave. They were so brave, you guys. They weren't exhibitionists. They were actors.
You still keep in touch with anyone from the show?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them. Yeah, we're still very, very close. I just did a show for Peter Page.
Oh.
Peter Page is now a producer. He has been actually for many years. And I just did one of his episodes. He asked me to come and guest with him, so I did. I'm so fortunate. Yeah, they're all very dear friends of mine. And Peter came to Palm Springs and interviewed me in front of all the men to sell my book. And all the proceeds went to the Palm Springs Library.
Well, speaking of that, what made you decide to write your memoir?
Well, I in a nutshell, I was invited to CBS right after the end of a Burn Notice, the last series I did. That was the longest running show. We were just about to start our 8th year, which is a long show. And Jeffrey, the lead, he was burned out. So CBS heard that Burn Notice was coming to an end. And they asked to meet me. I thought, this is so cool. Maybe they'll offer me another series. So I walk in, and Nina Tessler, president of CBS at that time. And she put out her hand and she said, "Welcome home, Sharon." I thought, this is so cool. That's where I did Cagney and Lacey. And I thought, what a lovely, lovely greeting. So I thought, this is going to be swell, right? So I sit down, and the head of comedy is there, the head of drama, and the head of new shows, and Nina Tess. And I'm there for an hour, and I do everything I can to entertain them, right? And at the end, Nina says, "You're a writer." I said, "Well, no, I am not." And she said, "Well, maybe you're not a writer, but you're a storyteller." I said, "Okay." And she said, "Did you know that we own Simon & Schuster?" I said, "No, I didn't." She said, "Well, we do. And I think you have a book in you." That's when I said, "I'm not a writer." She said, "No, but you're a storyteller." And she said, "We're calling Simon & Schuster today." And the next day I got a call from the president of Simon & Schuster asking if I would come and meet him in New York. So I waited a year. I just said, yeah. Waited a year, and nothing was happening for me. So I was in New York, and I set a meeting up to meet him. He gave me a deal that day. I read one chapter that I'd written to go in with, just in case. Well, that's sort of a lie, but it's too long to tell you how I came about reading it. But I did end up having to read something for him. My manager, he said, read for him, read what you wrote. I said, "No." The president says, "Read it. I'd love to hear it." So I read it. He said, "We'd like to offer you a book deal, and we want you to," his secretary down the hall was laughing when I was reading. So he said, "We also like you to do the audio version." And so I did. And I've won 3 awards for the audio.
Oh my
great.
God.
Well,
I'm talking a lot. Forgive me, I'm talking a lot. But
no, the memoir is fantastic. I went through it in 2 days. I just from cover
really?
yes.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
So I loved it. I thought it was, like I said at the beginning, it was just, funny, heartbreaking, everything. And just the stories are fantastic, as we see, as you've been telling. But, and
I told you my grandmother was force
Right.
behind me in that book. Not all happy, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the part where I went to a psychic, a few years ago. And I said, with my grandma, I said, I'm a successful actress. I've made wonderful money. I have awards. is my grandmother proud of me now? One thing I wanted all my life. Is she proud of me now? Did you ask her? She said, let me check. She came back and she said to tell you she's proud of you still.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
And it sounds just like her. That's enough. That's enough.
Well, do want to ask you, you mentioned that you're possibly going to do another Queer as Folk, variation of something. So,
oh, I don't know. The producers asked me would I be interested in doing it at Debbie's Diner.
I think
obviously. And I just recently called them again and said, I'd like to do that, but I mean, it has to be pitched, it has to be sold,
Well, hoping so. Will there be another Cagney and Lacey reunion at all?
I don't think so.
No more?
Well, Tyne and I are not kids anymore. And apparently CBS attempted to make it recently with other actors. And Barney was allowed to talk to them every day. They had to send him the dailies on his screen, and they had to talk to him. They were forced to. It was part of the contract. He'd look at the dailies. He'd try to advise them because they were just way off, and they wouldn't listen to a word he said, and CBS never bought it.
Oh,
what they failed to do was they failed to remember it was about the two women, not about who's got the gun and who's, it's not about the case. There are a lot of cases. It's about those two women.
Why should a network care what the creator has to say? I mean, it's mind-boggling.
I think contractually or something,
no,
they were forced.
I mean,
They were forced to listen to him, and they wouldn't. And
it's mind-boggling network decisions sometimes.
I know. It's a different world.
Well, Sharon, we want to thank you so much for coming on. I mean, we have your career is so impressive that we couldn't get to everything, but you are welcome back anytime. But again,
may I tell you one thing? May I tell you one thing as an example? Behind you is a picture of Tyne and me.
Yes.
Now, I played Cagney and Lacey. Do you know that every time we did a photo shoot, our publicist would be there, switching us, making us move the seat, back and forth, whoever gets to be on the left.
Yes, I see it's over the wrong people.
I know.
But
anyway,
again,
sorry, I just had to sort of.
No, it's funny. No, again, thank you. Like I said, anytime you'd like to come back, we would love to have you. It was just such
Thank you. This has been so much fun. You guys are wonderful. Thank you very much for having me.
It's our honor and privilege. Yes. You're very welcome.
Well,
okay,
this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Sharon Gless. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.